Hello, magandang araw, and welcome to the Koryolab 2021 Virtual Residency. Ako po si Deborah Lemwell, ang inyong host at tagapagtawid, and I will help you navigate through this virtual playing field of discovery. The CCP Choreographers series holds Koryolab as a platform for mid-career choreographers to be able to evolve and develop a deeper understanding and appreciation of choreography under the mentorship of certain pioneers in contemporary dance. So this year, Koryolab decided to house a virtual residency instead. But in this setup, the choreographers are given new perspective from 4 different fields which they will base their insights and reflections of their choreographic work. And that's our Koryolab. Here you will see that experiencing how the body transforms through technology tells us something about our live body. Yan ang twinning, isang kolaborasyon ng teknolohiya at sayaw na konsepto ni Ermitano. Anong pinanggagalingan ng mga obrang ganito at saan pa pwedeng pumunta?
Things moving, iba yung dating talaga. I mean, impact us completely differently from humans moving, because we have just as humans who are attuned to human motion, humans, we give different weight to things that are moving. We instinctively know that the screen is ghostly. It has no weight. I didn't like video acting as wallpaper. I called it, I hate digital wallpaper. So once I ruled that out, then it became, the problem was like, okay, if it's not going to be like, moving wallpaper, what could it be? I always described what I was doing in terms of counterpoint. It's like, yeah, I'm counterpointing what the dancers are doing, and I found out I was able to sort of like figure, oh, okay, this is hyperbole. Okay, in this place I'm sort of like putting some kind of background that they can dance against, or maybe I'm shooting a different angle to the dance. Video can do that. It can do like freeze frames, it can do slow motion, it can do top shots, it can do close-ups. So sometimes I would use that to sort of like show the action from a different angle. Another way of counterpointing it was changing the scale, or multiplying the dancers so that they were doing something on screen while they were doing something on stage. If I can be an obstacle to the dance. What that meant was that I wanted the images to have implications in what the dancers did. I was thinking, okay, I'd like it to happen in the other direction. I want the dancers to take into consideration what was happening on the screen and then think about it, the choreographer to think about it and then change their behavior, or I wanted the images to affect their dancing. I was creating basically video delays. So what that means is that you point the camera at somebody, it records a certain amount of video, and then it plays it like a couple of seconds, up to tens of seconds after what they did. So this was sort of like inspired by what I had seen heard musicians do. They used basically delay units, echo units, with their guitars. So it's not just like tang, 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 tang. Now, if you just play whatever you want, it just sounds like garbage. You can't just play. But if you play you have to give space for the multiple copies of it that come after. And that's, you know, in sound, you just have like things piling on top of each other. But if you have video, then you could, you know, the dimensions multiply. Eventually, we wound up sort of like evolving the dance, which, like you saw, I sort of like virtually danced with him as much as he danced. So that's what I wound up doing. You know, I would like show him like from 5 seconds back. I'd show him like stuttering. I could like freeze frame him sort of like hovering in space, things like that. So all of that happened, and it became sort of it became what the performance. That's what became. The performance became sort of like me interacting with the dancer. And I have to say that Rosam Prudenciado, who was the dancer I worked with, did in fact do exactly what I asked for, because like you can see him do like complicated stuff and then just stop and then do something very simple, like just bobbing his head, trusting that, or just basically giving room for the images to sort of like to perform behind him while he was just like doing kind of like rhythm guitar or something. That the images are playing lead while he does rhythm guitar. But another part of the performance, he'll start like doing lead, and then I'd like do like kind of like rhythmic thing, holding a background pattern for him, and so on. And that was that became what we did. And then in retrospect, I thought of things that how this could what directions this experiment could take in the future, and B, what other experiments could be done. The most straightforward implication was that I was thinking, you know what, it would be really good if the dancer would be able to mimic, I'm not exactly sure how, and I'm not even sure how physically it's possible, but to mimic glitch effects, you know, because like, for instance, when you're glitching, I could like go back and forth, kind of like thing. And, you know, in hip hop and like the growths of dances that come from hip hop, they often do a lot of imitating machine effects. I mean, that's something that hip hop that happens in hip hop. I think that would be an interesting direction for the dancer to take, and with an interest in like, you know, trying to create a vocabulary that was sort of like based on video glitch. That's what I was thinking would be an interesting thing to do. Although hip hop has a very friendly relationship to machines, it's not the only discipline where humans imitate non-human artifacts. At least one other
discipline I can name is the wayang orang, which is an Indonesian dance style, which, as its name implies, is the human version of shadow puppetry. So it's a dance style where the dancers actually draw their vocabulary from the movements of shadow puppets. So it's very angular, things like that. I have a very cold eye, I guess. So I like dances that, I like movements on the stage that, well, either, follow a kind of logic, or they're kind of like a visual thing, or they sort of like collage found motions. There's a lot of motions in the slaughterhouse, that are utilitarian, cutting, lifting, sitting, which would be a very interesting sort of vocabulary of motions that could be used. I think that's sort of like one approach, a way that you can, a way of thinking that, kumbaga, starts from a different vantage point, rather than the idea of like trying to express something or to tell a story. Another thing which I like is, just repetition and callbacks. So I like it when, there's a clear premise, and then you just see sort of like multiple answers to that premise. I selected this word, like the title for this, Dancing with the Alien, because, the obvious thing is that I thought of this title where the alien is like the machine. So Rosam was dancing with an alien, something which the images, which looked human, because of course they were images of him, but moved in inhuman ways. It could, like, they could stutter, they could go backward, and of course you can extend it. So it doesn't have to be an image of a human that was just shot a couple of seconds ago. So that's also possible for like inhuman images to move and to become the basis for a human to decide, where he will put his body. And of course, there are other sorts of machines, not just images. There are already experiments of people dancing with robots, and there are experiments where the human dances or moves under the restraint of harnesses or things that are attached to their bodies. So like, I think, what was it? Trisha Brown, I think, made this conceptual piece, man walking down the side of a building. And so that's another form of like alien, the machine that, and it's a very interesting form of alien. Although Joanne Bourgeois uses like very, very strange machines, the idea of studying human movement harness to a harness is not a new thing. It's not a novelty. You could actually say that wearing different kinds of clothing, dancers wearing different kinds of clothing, is actually a way of setting the premise of a harness. The other thing I wanted to mention is that one of the most obvious forms of technology that dance could interact with today is the technology that, let's just use for shorthand, Zoom. Basically, virtual performance, because that's what we've all been reduced to. The technology that we're all using, Zoom, is a completely different form of human communication and interaction and visual presentation, which ought to be explored in dance. That's a very obvious alien that would be interesting to dance with. And finally, so dancing with the alien could refer to an approach to human movement where you try to bring out like the strangeness and miraculousness of human movement rather than something that's ordinary. So this approach of trying to see the ordinary as miraculous again, that's the specific aesthetic approach of Russian formalism, I think. They talked about alienation, and this was like an aesthetic goal, to try to make the ordinary alien and strange again. Edmund Husserl, the philosopher, spoke about bracketing expectations, and when you try to see through what he called the prejudices of your perception in order to see to the core of something and figure out what was really going on in your head when you perceived something. So both of these are like analytical, alienating, cold approaches to phenomena which could be fruitful aesthetic programs.
Interested lang ako kasi kung paano, saan pa pupunta yung twinning ngayong ganito na yung setup. Ang interesting lang. Tapos nung pinapanood kasi si Rosam na sumasayaw doon, na disorient ako sa alien niya doon sa likod. Hindi ko maisip kung paano, hindi logical yung nangyari sa likod. Nagbago lang yung meaning and understanding ng body at ng alien for me. Kasi alien na ako pag napapanood nila ako sa live. So choreographing me, yung parang title ko ay I Don't Own My Body, choreographing Al.
Zoom is different, but maybe there's a way to experience it or as not a lack, to experience, to create it, to take, kumbaga, to exploit its, not just Zoom, but all these mediating forms of, these alienating and mediating technologies, to experience them as gifts or things that can give gifts. But let's assume that it can, because that's what, by taking the technology as a serious problem, this is the way we get to work. Where humans are living, and where we are sort of like looking at the world and trying to make sense of it, that is the process that creates culture. Like whatever you do is your culture.
Paano ba nagkakaroon ng halaga or saysay ang mga pang-araw-araw or ordinaryong galaw? Kailan nagkakaroon ng logic ang movement, or kailan nga ba nagma-make sense ang paggalaw or paggawa ng movements?
Dahil sa karanasan ko sa COVID-19 pandemic at sa lockdown, naramdaman ko na ako ay naging alienated sa performative at theatric aspect of doing dance. Marahil dahil na rin sa kakulangan ng oportunidad para sa akin bilang movement artist. Pero dahil dito nagkaroon sa akin ng panibagong anyo at panibagong kahulugan ang karaoke. Through karaoke, it became my accessible movement language to respond and adapt to my situation.
our task as a person who is alive in this time here and now is to overcome the blinders, the blindnesses of the past. This is what we owe to ourselves and to what we owe to the ones who inspired us.
Experiencing how technology can de-familiarize one's sense of the lived body can be the basis of how you can place the body in both real and virtual space and time.